I never thought a single sentence could change how I saw my own family, but it did. If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork. Those were the exact words my mother said while I was lying in an emergency room fighting for my life. And the craziest part? The only reason she wasn't there was because she was getting a manicure and facial with my sister on her wedding day.
Yeah.
That's my family. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. My name is Elizabeth, and when I was 16, I learned the hard way that blood doesn't always mean love, and sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you the most. But here's the part they never expected. The girl they abandoned didn't stay weak. And years later, I got my revenge in a way they never saw coming. But let me take you back to the day everything changed. It was early morning, the sun just coming up, and the whole house felt electric with wedding chaos. My sister, Stephanie, the golden child, was getting married, and everything had to revolve around her. She was the princess, the perfect daughter, the one who, according to my mom, deserved everything.
Me?
I was just there, the spare daughter, the invisible one. They didn't even ask me to be a bridesmaid, not even a flower girl when I was younger. And when I asked why, my mom didn't sugarcoat it. Sweetheart, Stephanie needs the spotlight. You just distract people. Distract? I wasn't even pretty, popular, or confident. I barely spoke. But somehow, my existence was a threat. Still, I tried to help, ironing tablecloths, folding napkins, loading decorations into the car. I wanted to feel included, normal, like family. But instead, my mom shoved a crumpled $10 bill into my hand and said, "Go pick up Stephanie's veil from the boutique. And hurry. Don't mess anything up." I forced a smile. Okay. I grabbed my bike, because unlike my sister, I wasn't allowed to use the car, and started riding downtown. I remember the wind, the cold metal handlebars under my palms, and the way the world looked normal, even though mine was about to collapse. I picked up the veil, carefully, and started riding back. That's when everything blurred. A speeding truck ran a red light. I heard brakes. I heard someone scream. Then I felt it, the full impact slamming into me, like my body was made of glass. The veil flew out of my hand as I hit the ground. The world went silent. I tasted blood. I couldn't move. Pain shot through every inch of my body, burning, stabbing, crushing, and I couldn't even speak. A stranger knelt beside me, shaking, calling 911. I remember thinking, Mom is going to be mad I ruined the veil. Not am I dying? Not am I okay? Just fear of their disappointment. Even then, I still wanted them to love me. The ambulance arrived fast. Lights, sirens, voices. Everything was loud and distant, like I was underwater. They cut open my clothes. I heard the words. Fractured pelvis. Possible spinal injury. Internal bleeding. We need parental consent for surgery. And that's when everything went wrong. The hospital called my mother. She didn't rush there. She didn't cry. She didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she told the nurse, "We're at the spa. It's Stephanie's wedding. If she dies, call me. I don't have time for paperwork." The nurse closed her eyes like she wanted to scream. "Ma'am, this is life-threatening." And my mother, my flesh and blood, laughed. "Oh, please. She's dramatic. Just sedate her or something. We'll deal with it later." Then she hung up. That moment, that was the first time someone fought for me. Not my mom. Not my sister. A stranger, the nurse, stood up for me. She argued with the doctor, with administration, with anyone who tried to delay care. She refused to let me fade away just because someone else decided I wasn't worth saving. And the hospital eventually made a choice. Perform the surgery first. Deal with the legal mess later. Everything went dark as anesthesia hit. Hours later, when I finally woke up, my throat was dry, my body numb, and every movement felt foreign, like I wasn't living inside myself anymore. A nurse gently checked my vitals and whispered, You're safe, sweetheart. The surgery went well. I tried to speak. My voice cracked. Did my mom sign the papers?
She paused.
Her eyes softened, the kind of softness people use when they're about to tell you something that breaks you. No, she said quietly. Your mother never showed up. My heart sank. But someone else did. She handed me my chart and I froze. Right next to legal guardian, in bold permanent ink, was a name I never expected. Someone who wasn't family. Someone who owed me nothing. Someone who changed everything. And that guardian was Mrs. Anderson. When I saw her name written there, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Mrs. Anderson? My high school English teacher? The one who always stayed after class to ask if I was okay? The one who let me sit in her classroom during lunch when the cafeteria felt like a battlefield? The one who once said, "You don't have to be loud to matter?"
Yeah.
Her. I stared at that paper like I was reading a different person's life. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. Finally someone chose me. The nurse smiled softly. She signed immediately.
No hositaschen.
My throat tightened. Did she know? The nurse nodded. She knows your mother refused. The tears came before I could stop them. Not silent ones, heavy, shaking ones. The kind that feel like grief and relief mixed together. The nurse held my hand. You're not alone anymore, Elizabeth. For the first time in my life. I believed it. The next morning, Mrs. Anderson walked into my hospital room. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked tired, like she'd been up all night worrying. Not because she had to, but because she cared. When she saw me awake, she rushed to my bedside. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing hair off my forehead. "You scared me." I tried to speak, but pain shot through my ribs, so I just stared at her, confused, grateful, overwhelmed. "Why?" I finally whispered. Her eyes softened. "Because you needed someone. And sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you simply don't." I swallowed hard. My mom didn't even come. She closed her eyes for a second, angry in a quiet, controlled way. I know. Those two words hit harder than anything else. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't shocked. She already understood the kind of life I had. She sat beside me, her voice calm but firm. "Elizabeth, I'm not replacing your family, but from now on, I will not let you face the world alone." No one had ever said something like that to me. Ever. Days passed. My body healed slowly, stitches, metal screws, pain meds, physical therapy. Every morning I woke up, and Mrs. Anderson was there. Not just as a name on a chart, but as someone who showed up with breakfast, clean clothes, and books she thought I'd love. One morning she said, "You're stronger than you think." And for the first time, I wanted to believe it. Meanwhile, my family stayed silent.
No visits.
No calls. Not even a text. Not even to ask if I was alive. But they weren't silent online. I saw pictures on social media. My sister smiling in a wedding dress, my mother holding champagne, everyone dancing and celebrating. The caption? "Sparkle's best day ever." Sparkles. There wasn't a single mention of me. Not one.
It was like I didn't exist.
A piece of me broke that day, but another piece hardened. If they didn't care when I almost died, then I was done begging for love. After 3 weeks, the doctor cleared me to go home, but Mrs. Anderson shook her head. "You're not going back to that house," she said gently but firmly. "Not while you're vulnerable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But my things, my room." She gave a sad smile. "Elizabeth, do you really think they care you're gone?" That hit harder than the accident. She offered me options: temporary guardianship, therapy, a safe place to stay. I chose her home. Living with Mrs. Anderson felt surreal. Her house smelled like cinnamon and fresh laundry. She cooked breakfast. She asked about my day. She listened, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. One evening, while I struggled through physical therapy exercises, she placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "You matter. Not because of what you do or how perfect you are, You matter because you exist. Nobody had ever said that to me before. And slowly, I started believing it. I started healing, not just physically, but emotionally. But there was one thing my mother didn't expect. My medical bills. The surgery. The treatment. The therapy. The long-term recovery. All of it, legally, was still her responsibility. So when the hospital sent the bill, and she realized she couldn't ignore me anymore, she finally showed up. Not out of love. Not out of guilt. But because money was involved. She stormed into Mrs. Anderson's home like she owned it. I was sitting in a wheelchair when she walked in. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect fake smile. "There you are," she said through clenched teeth. "Are you done with this little victim act?" I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel scared, just tired. She crossed her arms. "We're leaving. Get up." But instead of obeying, I looked her dead in the eyes and said,
No.
She blinked. "What did you just say?" My voice didn't shake when I repeated it.
No.
"I'm not going with you." Her jaw dropped. She turned to Mrs. Anderson. "You brainwashed her." But Mrs. Anderson didn't flinch. She finally sees the truth. "And you don't get to silence her anymore." My mother laughed, cold and sharp. "Oh, sweetheart, you think you can survive without us?" I took a deep breath, and with a steady voice full of quiet power, I replied, "I already am." My mother's expression changed instantly, like someone had slapped her pride instead of her face. Her eyes narrowed, lips tightened, and her voice dropped into that cold tone I knew too well. "Don't be ridiculous, Elizabeth. You're still a child. You don't get to make decisions." For years, that sentence worked on me. Not anymore. Mrs. Anderson stepped forward, not aggressive, not confrontational, just protective. "That's where you're wrong," she said calmly. "Elizabeth does get to make decisions. And legally, she has a new guardian."
Me.
The room went silent. My mother blinked, shocked. "Temporarily. Until I say otherwise." Mrs. Anderson shook her head gently.
No.
"Until a judge makes that decision, not you." My mother looked at me then, not with concern or sadness, but like I was some investment she was losing control over. "Fine," she hissed. "Play house with your teacher. But don't expect us to fund your little recovery." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "And don't expect her sister to care either. Today is her honeymoon. Some of us have real lives." Then she disappeared down the hall, heels clicking like a metronome, ticking down the last seconds of her influence over me. The door slammed, and for the first time in 16 years, the sound didn't scare me. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. My mother wasn't the type to lose gracefully. Within days, she filed for custody again, claiming I was manipulated and emotionally unstable. She told the court Mrs. Anderson was using me and that I was just seeking attention. I wasn't even surprised. That was her pattern. When reality wasn't flattering, she rewrote it. But she underestimated one thing. People were finally paying attention. Doctors, nurses, social workers. Everyone involved in my case submitted statements confirming that she refused my surgery. The voicemail she left? The one where she said I wasn't worth the paperwork?
Yeah.
That became evidence. When my mother realized her lies wouldn't work, she switched tactics. She tried guilt. She showed up to school once, fake crying, mascara running, acting like a mother who'd spent weeks worried sick. She knelt beside my wheelchair and whispered, "Why are you doing this to us?" "Not to me. Not for me."
To us.
I kept my voice steady. "You left me to die." Her tears stopped instantly. She stood up and whispered, low and venomous, "You think she cares about you? She doesn't. Once she gets bored, she'll throw you away too. Just like everyone else." She leaned closer, voice sharp as a knife. "You're nothing without us." But this time, her words didn't land. Because I finally knew the truth. I wasn't nothing. I just wasn't hers. By the time the court hearing arrived, everything felt surreal. I sat beside Mrs. Anderson, my hands shaking, not because I doubted her, but because this was the first time I was fighting for myself. My mother sat across the room with my sister beside her, looking bored, scrolling on her phone like the whole thing annoyed her. Stephanie didn't look at me once. Not even when I was called to testify. My lawyer asked gentle questions. Elizabeth, how did you end up in the hospital? I was hit by a truck while running an errand for my mother. What happened next? The doctor said I needed emergency surgery. And your mother's response? My throat tightened, but I forced myself to say it. She told the hospital, "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." Gasps echoed in the courtroom. My mother glared at me like she wanted to tear me apart. But I wasn't done. She didn't visit. She didn't call. She didn't ask if I survived. Not once. The judge leaned forward. And what happened instead? I looked at Mrs. Anderson, her eyes soft, encouraging. She came.
She stayed.
She signed the papers knowing there could be legal consequences. She chose me. Silence. Heavy. Real. Painful. Then the judge spoke. Elizabeth, do you feel safer living with your mother or with Mrs. Anderson? My hands stopped shaking. With her, I said without hesitation. 100%. With her, I'm finally safe. The judge nodded slowly. And that moment, right there, that breath between past and future, felt like standing on a cliff waiting to see if I'd fall or fly. The verdict came 2 weeks later. I was sitting at Mrs. Anderson's dining table when the letter arrived. She opened it carefully, her hands steady, even though mine were shaking. She read it once.
Twice.
Then looked at me with tears in her eyes. It's official. I swallowed hard. What is? She smiled, a real, warm, life-changing smile. You're staying. I'm your legal guardian. My breath left my body all at once. I didn't cry immediately, not because I didn't feel it, but because my brain needed time to understand something new. I had a home. A real one. A safe one. But while I found peace, my mother found something else.
Fear.
Because she didn't just lose me. She lost control. And she had no idea the consequences that were coming. Life with Mrs. Anderson became quietly beautiful. Not perfect. Not dramatic. Just safe. We cooked dinner together. We talked about school, books, music, normal things families talk about. She came to every appointment, every physical therapy session, every milestone. I started walking again, not perfectly, not without pain, but I walked. And every shaky step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But while I was healing, my mother was unraveling. At first, she ignored me, pretending losing custody meant losing responsibility. Then the bills came.
Surgery.
Hospital stay.
Therapy.
Rehabilitation. Over $240,000 worth. And legally, she was still the one responsible. The first sign she realized it was when she sent a text, short, cold, and predictable. We need to talk. Mrs. Anderson and I both stared at it. She asked, "Do you want to respond?" I shook my head. For once, my silence wasn't fear. It was power. But she didn't give up that easily. Next came the emails. Then the calls. Then the threats. You think she'll pay for you forever? You owe us for everything we've done. If you don't come home and drop this financial responsibility, I will sue you.
Sue me.
Her own daughter. The one she left to die. But she wasn't really talking to me. She was talking to the version of me she used to control. And that girl? She wasn't here anymore. So when she finally showed up, pounding on Mrs. Anderson's door with enough force to shake it, I was ready. Mrs. Anderson opened the door calmly, like she was expecting a delivery, not a storm. My mother pushed past her, voice shrill. You think you've won? You think taking her makes you some kind of hero? Mrs. Anderson stood tall, voice steady.
No.
I didn't take her. You gave her away. My mother spun toward me. You're going to fix this. You're going to tell the hospital I wasn't contacted. They recorded the call. I interrupted softly. Her mouth froze mid-sentence. I continued, voice calm. They have proof. Your words. Your refusal. Your choice. Her face turned pale, not because she cared about the truth, but because it had consequences. She tried again, voice trembling with anger. Do you know what people are saying? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?
Ah,
There it was. Not regret. Just reputation. I nodded slowly.
yes.
And you deserve every bit of it. Her jaw tightened. You're ruining us. I met her eyes.
No.
You ruined us the day you decided your spa appointment mattered more than my life. Silence settled between us, sharp and suffocating. She tried one last tactic.
Guilt.
You owe us, she whispered, after everything we sacrificed. A bitter laugh escaped me. Not cruel, just honest. What did you sacrifice? She opened her mouth to answer, but I didn't let her. You neglected me. You ignored me. You humiliated me. You made sure I knew Stephanie mattered, and I didn't. My voice cracked, but it didn't break. And when I needed you the most, you left me. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe I was speaking to her this way. What do you want? She finally asked, voice hollow. The girl she expected, the silent one, would have said nothing. But I wasn't her anymore. So I took a breath and said the words I never imagined I'd say. I want you to sign away parental rights permanently. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I am. You think she's your mother now? She snapped, gesturing at Mrs. Anderson. I glanced at her, kind eyes, steady presence, and spoke clearly. She doesn't have to be my mother. She just chose to care. And that's more than you ever did. My mother's voice dropped into something cold, sharp, and desperate. If I do this, I want something in return. I raised an eyebrow. Of course you do. She leaned forward. You make the hospital bill disappear. There it was. Her priority wasn't me. It never had been. It was money. But that worked in my favor. I nodded once. Done. Mrs. Anderson placed the paperwork on the table. My mother hesitated, but not for long.
She signed. Fast.
Like she wanted it done before she changed her mind. When her pen lifted, a strange silence filled the room. Final, heavy, irreversible. She looked at me, really looked, and for once, she wasn't angry. She was confused. Like she couldn't understand how the powerless child she created became someone who finally stood up. She whispered, You'll regret this. I shook my head gently.
No.
I'm finally free. She didn't respond. She just walked out, quietly, almost ghost-like, and the door clicked shut behind her. And that sound, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of my life. The next morning felt different. Not lighter, not instantly perfect, just real. For the first time, there was no weight sitting on my chest. No fear of a slammed door, a disappointed sigh, or being reminded that I took up too much space. Instead, I woke up in a home where someone actually knocked before entering my room. Where breakfast meant conversation, not criticism. Where I wasn't a burden or an inconvenience. I was a person. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that day, staring at the signed paperwork, the legal proof that I no longer belonged to the woman who abandoned me. Mrs. Anderson sat across from me, sipping her coffee. You okay? She asked gently. I nodded. Then I shook my head. Then I shrugged. I don't know, I admitted with a small laugh. It feels like I lost a family, but also like I finally have one. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Sometimes losing the wrong people is the only way to make room for the right ones. Those words stayed with me. Over the next few months, life didn't magically turn into sunshine and movie moments. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days I felt strong. Others I felt angry or sad or confused. But I wasn't healing alone anymore. I went to therapy. I focused on school. I learned how to walk without a limp. I learned how to speak without apologizing. I learned that I didn't have to earn love. It wasn't a reward. It was something I deserved from the beginning. And somewhere along the way, I stopped blaming myself. A year later, on what would have been the anniversary of my sister's wedding, something unexpected happened. A letter showed up in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, neat, sharp, controlled. My mother. I sat with it for a long time before opening it. Inside, there were only 6 words. We are filing for bankruptcy. Happy?
No apology. No acknowledgement. No reflection.
Just blame. I folded the letter slowly and placed it in a drawer, not to keep the hurt, but to remember how far I'd come. Because the truth was, I wasn't happy about their bankruptcy. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt done. That part of my life was over. They were no longer my responsibility, emotionally, financially, or morally.
And that was enough.
Years passed. I graduated high school with honors. Mrs. Anderson cried louder than anyone. I went to college, something my mother once said would be a waste of money. I studied social work and psychology, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to be for others what someone finally became for me. A voice, a lifeline, a reason to keep going. On my first day working at a youth shelter, a scared 12-year-old girl sat across from me, shaking and staring at the floor. Her mom had called her dramatic. Her dad said she was too sensitive. Her family told her she was lucky they put up with her. She whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the problem." I knelt beside her, gently lifted her chin, and said,
No.
"You're not the problem. You're just surrounded by people who don't see your worth." She broke down crying, and I held her, the way someone once held me. And in that moment, I realized something. My story didn't break me. It built me. Today, I'm 23. I live in a small apartment filled with soft blankets, plants I forget to water, and pictures with people who chose me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Mrs. Anderson is still in my life, not just as a guardian, not just as a mentor, but as family. Real family. She didn't replace my mother. She simply showed me what a mother is supposed to be. Sometimes she jokes, "I adopted a teenager, not a puppy," and every time she says it, I laugh, really laugh, the kind of laugh that comes from a healed place. So if you're listening to this and you're someone who feels invisible, unwanted, or unlovable, hear me. You matter. Not because you're perfect. Not because someone approves of you. Not because you earned it. You matter because you exist. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is living a life they said you'd never have. A life where you are safe, where you are wanted, where you are loved. A life where the people who hurt you no longer get to write your story. Because now, you're the one holding the pen. So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Or should family loyalty matter more than the past? If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or treated like you don't matter, I hope my story reminds you that one day, you'll be the one walking away, not them. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, don't forget to thumbs up like the video. Speech balloon, drop your thoughts in the comments. Pushpin subscribe for more real-life revenge stories. Bell and hit the notification bell so you never miss one. Because trust me, I've got more stories you won't believe.